Why would a starving shepherd puppy refuse a full bowl of food in broad daylight outside Charlottesville, Virginia? She was 3 months old, white, shaking in the winter sun, staring past the food like it wasn't meant for her. I pulled over because you do not just drive past a puppy curled on the shoulder like a forgotten bag of trash. Up close, I could see every rib pressing under her dirty coat, chest fluttering with short, nervous breaths. Beside her sat a metal bowl piled high with dry kibble, fresh enough that it still smelled like someone had just poured it. But she did not move toward it. She kept her front paws planted and her body angled sideways, as if she were trying to block my view of the ditch behind her. On the asphalt and dust around the bowl lay scattered pieces of kibble, and a thin trail of crumbs ran away from the roadside into the weeds. It looked like someone had carried the food one piece at a time, not toward safety, but out toward the brush. When I took a step closer, her eyes flicked past me again, following that trail, and her whole body went tense. Somewhere in the tangle of grass beyond the guardrail, a tiny, broken sound slipped out, more a breath than a cry. The puppy did not beg, did not even look at the food. She just lowered herself over the dirt, as if she was ready to throw her whole little body between that sound and the rest of the world. I followed the trail instead of the road. The kibble crumbs led off the shoulder and into the weeds, a shaky little line of brown against winter grass. When I stepped off the asphalt, the puppy pushed herself up on trembling legs and came after me. She stayed at my side, then in front, then at my side again, checking over her shoulder every few steps like she was making sure I was really coming. Every time that thin sound came from ahead, her ears flicked and she leaned toward it, like a compass that only knew one direction. A few yards in, hidden in the tangle of dead grass and old trash, I saw what she had been guarding. Curled in a shallow dip in the ground was a tiny white kitten, no more than 7 weeks old, reaching out with his paws at nothing. His eyes were cloudy and unfocused, not tracking me, not tracking the light, just staring through everything while he followed the sound of our breathing. Right beside him lay a torn, crumpled bag of dry food, ripped open at the corner with small, desperate tooth marks. Kibble had spilled out around him, and that same thin trail of crumbs ran from the torn bag all the way back toward the metal bowl on the roadside. I looked from the bag to the bowl in my mind's eye, then back to the puppy. Her ribs, the full dish, the scattered food the kitten could never find on his own. It hit me then. She had been dragging that food out of the bag and carrying it piece by piece to a bowl she almost never touched. She wasn't turning away from food because she didn't want it. She was saving it, holding on, waiting for someone who could help the one little creature weaker than she was. Behind me, a car passed, throwing a burst of wind through the grass, and the kitten flinched blindly at the noise. The puppy stepped closer to him without thinking, shoulder brushing his tiny body, and I realized if I walked back to my truck alone, I'd be leaving behind a promise she'd already made for both of them. I didn't stand there weighing options. My hands just moved. I slid one arm under the tiny kitten, tucking him inside my jacket against my chest. He was so light it barely felt like anything, just a trembling warmth pressed to my shirt. The puppy watched every inch of that movement, eyes locked on the lump under the zipper, ears twitching at his thin, uncertain mews. When I turned back for her, she tried to stand and almost didn't make it. I scooped her up awkwardly, more arms than skill, and she didn't fight me at all. She didn't look at my face, didn't check who I was. Her head turned toward my chest, toward the muffled sound of the kitten, and stayed there. I carried them both to the truck like that, one close to my heart, one heavy in my arms. I set the puppy on the back seat, then climbed in and shut the door on the chill. I'm not a rescuer, I heard myself say into the quiet cab. I'm not a volunteer, not a hero. My name is Jude. I'm just some guy in his 40s who couldn't keep driving. I offered her a shallow bowl of water from a bottle I kept in the console. She sniffed it once, then shifted her weight and inched closer to the sound in my jacket instead. She pressed her nose against the fabric over the kitten, let out a slow, shaky breath, and finally settled. We rolled into town with the heater humming and my hazard lights still blinking. As the vet clinic came into view and I eased into the parking lot, I glanced back to check on her. Her eyes met mine for half a second, then her head slipped down to the floorboard, body going loose in a way that made my stomach drop, like someone had just reached over and flipped her off. I carried her in first. The clinic was just a small strip mall place, glass door, bell that jingled too loud for how quiet she'd become in my arms. A tech rushed over with a towel and a calm voice, the kind people use when they've seen a lot but still care. She took one look at the puppy's ribs, at the way her head lolled when I shifted my grip, and her whole face changed. "I've got her," she said, and slid the towel under the puppy like she was made of glass. I went back for the kitten, still tucked under my jacket, and on the way in, I grabbed the metal bowl and the torn food bag from the truck. I didn't know if it mattered, but something in my gut said it did. In the exam room, they hooked the puppy up to fluids, drew blood, checked her gums, her heartbeat. The vet frowned at the numbers on the screen, at the way her heart struggled like a tired runner. "Severely underweight," he said. "Dehydrated. Heavy parasite load. This didn't happen in a day." He moved to the kitten next, shining a light across those cloudy little eyes. No blink. No tracking. "Blind," he said quietly. "Not in pain right now. He can live like this with help." When I set the bowl and the ripped bag on the counter, he turned and really looked at them. He picked up the bag, ran his thumb over the small tooth marks near the tear, then glanced back at the puppy on the table. "We ran her blood work," he said after a moment. "Her body shows long-term underfeeding, but she clearly had some access to food." He looked straight at me, then at the kitten, then at the bowl. "She wasn't refusing food because there wasn't any," he said. "She was refusing to eat first." Something in my chest went tight. I watched her lie there under those bright lights, legs limp, chest rising under tape and tubing, and all I could think was that I had no idea if a body that stubborn had anything left to come back with. I brought them home because there wasn't anywhere else that made sense. The vet had done what he could for now. Fluids, meds, instructions on a folded sheet of paper. But when the door of my truck shut behind us in my driveway, it was just me, a worn-out puppy, and a blind kitten, depending on whatever I could put together in my living room. I'm not a fancy guy. I grabbed an old moving box from the closet, lined it with a folded towel, threw a soft blanket over the bottom, set a small bowl of water on a cheap mat I'd bought years ago for a different dog and never thrown out. It wasn't pretty. It just looked like real life, which is all they needed. I laid the kitten in the box first, near the corner, so he'd feel walls on two sides. He reached out with his paws, tapping at the air until they landed on the fabric. His tiny body relaxed just a little. Then I helped the puppy lie down right beside the box, her head level with his. Her nose started working immediately, taking inventory of every smell like she was clocking in for a shift. I poured fresh food into a clean bowl and slid it close to her. For the first time that day, the smell filled the room instead of the cold. She glanced at it, then turned away and stared at the box. The kitten let out one small, tired squeak. Only then did she move. I picked him up again and set him near the rim of the bowl, my hands clumsy and careful at the same time. He sniffed, paws stumbling over the edge, trying to find where the world started. The puppy leaned in and, with the gentlest little nudge of her nose, pushed his shoulder until his mouth brushed a piece of kibble. He began to chew, slow and serious. She waited. When he had taken his first bites, she lowered her head and started to eat beside him, quiet, hurried only by hunger, not by panic. Later, when his belly finally won over his fear, the kitten curled up in the box and went still. The puppy circled once, then stretched out along the open side, her back pressed against the edge so there was nowhere for his small body to roll. She stayed like that, eyes half closed, holding the line for him without anyone asking her to. A few days later, my living room didn't feel like a sick corner anymore. It felt like her little patrol route. Every morning, the puppy was the first one up. She would stand, shake herself once, and walk a slow lap around the room before I even had coffee. She checked the box, the water bowl, the door, then circled back to the box again. Only after she'd made sure the kitten was still there would she settle enough to lie down. I bought a tiny collar with a soft bell and buckled it gently around his neck. The sound was barely there, just a faint chime when he moved, but she caught it every time. When I set him on the rug, she would walk ahead a step, then turn and touch his shoulder with her nose. He'd take a wobbly step toward the bell, paws tapping at the floor, and she'd wait, then move one more step, always just out in front of him. In the hallway, she learned to stop before the doorway, planting her feet and glancing back, like she was marking an invisible edge for him. If there was a shoe, a bag, anything on the floor, she'd sniff it, bump it once, and then stand between it and the kitten until he had passed. She wasn't just keeping him company. She was showing him where the world started and ended. Out in the yard, though, I started to notice things that didn't sit right. In bright sunlight, she narrowed her eyes down to slits, head tilted like she was trying to focus on something far away. On the porch step, she misjudged the edge and slipped, catching herself at the last second, then acted like nothing happened. I tossed a soft toy a few feet away, and she didn't react until the kitten's bell chimed in that direction. Then she walked straight for the sound. I told myself she was just tired, still coming back from being empty for too long. But even as I said it, I caught myself staring at her eyes and wondering what exactly she could see. It's strange how fast a routine can feel like it's always been there. Within a week, my small house had a new rhythm. The puppy would move through each room like she was checking a map only she could see. If there was a sharp corner, a chair leg, the edge of a low table, she'd plant herself there when the kitten was moving, shoulder turned just enough to block him from bumping it. He, in turn, stopped searching for walls and started searching for her. His paws would pat at the air until they hit her fur, and then he'd relax like he'd found the edge of the world. I'd catch myself watching them more than the TV, the way she'd sigh when he climbed over her paw, the way he'd press his face into her chest like it was the safest place he knew. And I'll be honest, that scared me. Not them, me. It had been a long time since anything in my house needed me for more than a bill payment. One afternoon, I did something I'm not proud of. I set the kitten down in the hallway and closed a bedroom door between them, just to see what she would do. I didn't even make it 3 steps. The puppy was on her feet, nose working hard, paws steady and deliberate as she followed his tiny sounds and scent trail. She sat right next to the closed door and stayed there until I opened it, then went straight to him, standing over his small body until his breathing slowed. Later that day, in the kitchen, she walked into the side of the table with her shoulder. Not hard, but enough that she stopped, blinked a few times, and gave her head a quick shake like she was trying to get water from her ears. The toy I dropped to the left got no reaction at all. The bell on the kitten's collar rang behind her, and she turned toward that instantly, walking to him without a second's doubt, ignoring the bright light pouring through the window. I watched her stand there, that head bent over him, and the words slipped out before I could stop them. What happens if one day she can't see anything either? She lifted her face toward me, and for the first time I really noticed how the light caught in her eyes, just a little cloudy around the edges, like the world was already starting to blur. The question in my head wouldn't shut up, so I took her back to the vet. Same small clinic, same bell on the door, same tech who remembered her ribs and that limp little body from the first visit. This time they weren't checking if she would make it through the night. This time it was about what kind of life she might have if she did. The vet dimmed the lights a little and held her face gently in his hands. He shined a narrow beam across each eye, watching for how the pupils tightened. He moved his finger slowly from side to side, close, then farther away, seeing when she followed and when she didn't. He rolled a cotton ball past her line of sight, something that made no sound at all, just to see if her eyes alone would catch it. "She's not blind," he said finally, "but her lenses aren't clear like they should be. Think of it like looking through a fogged window. She can see shapes, movement, but bright light makes it harder, and it may get worse as she gets older." My throat felt dry. "So what does that mean for her?" I asked. "She can still live a good, normal life," he said. "Dogs are built to use their noses and ears first anyway. If her vision drops more, she'll just lean on those even harder. You'll notice her trusting smell and sound more than sight. That's not failure. That's adaptation." I walked back out to the hallway with that word rattling around in my head. Adaptation. The kitten was in his little carrier on the floor, bell chiming softly as he shifted. A staff member pushed open a heavy door at the end of the corridor, and before it even hit the stop, the puppy moved. She stepped cleanly between the carrier and the doorway, body turned sideways, bracing like a shield. She hadn't seen the door first. She'd felt the air move, heard the hinges, and decided her place without even thinking about what she might not see someday. The vet's words helped my head. They didn't stop the bad night when it came. It started quiet. She ate a little at dinner, slower than usual, then went to lie on the kitchen floor instead of by the box. Her breathing sounded heavier, like every inhale had to climb a hill. When I called her name out of habit and remembered I hadn't given her one yet, my stomach twisted. The kitten sensed it before I did. He slid out of the box, paws scraping softly over the tile, nose searching for her warmth. He couldn't find it. He cried, this thin, broken sound, reaching for something he knew was supposed to be there. I sat down on the floor next to them, back against the cabinet, bare feet going numb on the cold tile. No emergency number in my phone, no overnight clinic on speed dial. Just a regular man in a kitchen with a puppy who wouldn't get up and a blind kitten crawling toward her. I put a hand on her side and felt how hard her heart was working, how shallow the breaths really were. For a minute, I wanted to pretend it was just a dip, just tiredness. But then I saw her eyes half open, staring at nothing in particular, and something inside me cracked. "Hey," I whispered, voice shaking more than I liked. "You don't get to leave him yet." The kitten was still scooting forward, claws ticking, crying like he was afraid of the empty space between them. I swallowed hard. "Lumen," I said, the name just appearing like it had been waiting in the room the whole time. "Please stay. At least stay for him." It wasn't dramatic. No sudden leap to her feet. Just the smallest pull of one front paw, dragging it a few inches across the tile, then the other. She inched toward that sound the way she'd once inched toward a torn food bag. Her nose finally bumped his side, and she let it rest there, then slid it over him so her muzzle covered his tiny chest. The kitten quieted immediately, pressing into her like he'd found his whole world again. She lay almost completely still after that, breath thin and slow, body giving her nothing to spare. But even that, close to the edge, she had turned toward him, not toward the water bowl, not toward my hand, like the choice had never really been a question at all. Morning came like it always does, rude and bright and not asking how the night went. I woke up on the kitchen floor with a stiff back and pins and needles in my legs. The kitten was tucked against her chest, both of them still breathing, and for a second I just watched to make sure that was true. Then she stirred. It wasn't graceful. She pushed one paw against the tile, slid a little, tried again. Her back legs shook when she brought them under her. She paused halfway up, panting like she'd climbed a flight of stairs, then finally got all 4 feet under her and stood there, swaying but upright. While she rested, I did something small that felt big. I moved the box to the other side of the room, shifted the food bowl closer to the hallway instead of next to her usual spot. Nothing dramatic, just enough to see what they would do with a new map. The kitten mewed when I picked him up, bell on his collar giving that faint little ring, and I set him down near the middle of the floor. She heard that sound and turned her head, eyes a little unfocused, nose flaring. One step toward him. Pause. Nose to his side, a quick check. Then she stepped ahead of him, just far enough that the bell would follow. He walked toward her, bumping her leg, and she waited. Another step, another wait. They moved like that across the room until her paws found the edge of the mat and the smell of fresh food. She nudged his shoulder with her nose, guiding his face toward the bowl. Only when he started to eat did she lower her head to join him, calm and certain in a world she wasn't seeing clearly anymore. Watching them, I felt something settle in my chest. Not panic, not even relief. Just the quiet, heavy thought that maybe this wasn't a temporary rescue anymore. Maybe this was what, from now on, was going to look like for all 3 of us. Weeks turned into a pattern I could almost set my watch by. Lumen grew into her legs and her chest filled out, but the way she moved never changed. At the top of the basement stairs, she always stopped, body turned sideways, blocking the drop. I'd set the kitten at the edge of the hallway and listened to the bell on his collar ring as he padded toward her. He'd tap around with those small paws until they found her front leg. Only then would she shuffle back one slow step, escorting him away from the first step like a security rail that could breathe. When the washing machine thumped and rattled in the laundry room, He'd flinch at the noise and freeze. Before I could get up from the table, Lumen would already be there, stretched out between him and the sound, head up, ears turned to track the rhythm. Every new box I dropped off from the store, every chair I moved, she had to inspect first. Nose along each edge, one cautious paw, a little pause. Only when she'd mapped it out would she let him wander past it. I stopped telling people, I'm not a rescuer. The truth was simpler. I lived with them. I fed them. I gave the meds on schedule and watched these two small lives figure out how to handle a house full of corners. One who couldn't see, one who might not see everything forever. Both of them walking around the sharp parts like they'd made a deal with each other. One night on the couch, I finally gave the kitten his name. Snowdrop, I said as he nosed blindly along Lumen's chest, searching for that familiar heartbeat. He found it, sighed, and sank down against her. She shifted just enough to lay one paw across his side, placed perfectly so he couldn't roll off the cushion, and I knew by then that nothing about that gesture was an accident. I never planned on any of this. Not a dog bed in my living room, not a blind kitten on my couch, not bowls lined up by the back door. I wasn't looking for a story. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I was just a man driving home who saw a starving shepherd puppy lying next to a full bowl of food and found out she was skipping her own meals to feed someone weaker than herself. Watching Lumen now, leading Snowdrop around table legs and doorways, I keep thinking about that first day. She was willing to go hungry while she could still see, and now she guides a blind kitten through a house she sometimes has to navigate by memory, smell, and sound. She leads someone who can't see at all, while knowing her own light might fade someday. That's not a pretty quote about compassion. That's what compassion looks like when it's real and tired and lying on your kitchen floor. I've come to believe stories like theirs are not fairy tales. They're chances. Chances for somebody watching to pause, to feel that tug in their chest, and actually do something with it. Maybe it's walking into a shelter. Maybe it's donating to a local rescue. Maybe it's just choosing the scared dog in the back instead of the confident one up front. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. If Lumen can choose to go last at the food bowl so Snowdrop can go first, then surely we can choose to be a little braver, a little kinder with what we've been given. If this touched you, share it. Tell someone about the dog who led a blind kitten through a blurry world. Share your own stories of strange little friendships between animals, so the people who love dogs, who watch dog stories, keep seeing the ones that matter. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, why not watch another one? YouTube thinks this video is perfect for watching. See you. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.